super special
Good to
going
see you
on
too.
today. So yeah, definitely sort of a different sort of video than we would normally do, but we have some being in different continent problems that uh, Zoom is very nice and helps us solve. So yeah,
Here,
super
I think it's
grateful.
past my bedtime where you are.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Yeah, so Per, thank you so much for joining us. Same to you, Jeremy. Really appreciate you guys taking some time to talk with us here at Smoking Pipes about uh, super exciting collaboration between Per and Jeremy, the Per G. Jensen Legacy Collection. So I know this project has been in development for quite a while now, and uh, there's a lot of R&D that went into it. Um, Per, can you tell us a little bit about what the Legacy Collection means, like as a series, like what the sort of origins of this idea were, and kind of what you wanted this new series to kind of represent for you as a master blender?
Yeah, the background is my father,
Okay.
Georg Jensen, who well, he established a pipe factory in 1954. But before that, he had a very exciting life, I would say. Um, Unfortunately, he died when I was very young. I was 20,
Mm,
and left me with a pipe factory. And you have to remember this is 1980.
mm,
So the community was looking at the only male. There was my mother in the company. There was my sister. I was the only male, so they automatically said, "Well, he's in charge." Um, and I was a bit sorry, my English, but I was very angry at my father at that time.
Mm,
I had the feeling he left me
hmm
mm,
with this strange company that I didn't know, and without education. And
sure.
then over the years, it's always good when you grow older, you get
Mm,
milder. So all these feelings, I thought about them from time to time, and got a little bit further every time. And here, when I moved to Berlin 3 years ago, I had just packed everything I had in Denmark in carton boxes. When I unpacked them here, I found a lot of photographs from his early life,
mm,
and came to the realization, well, he had an extremely interesting life.
hmm
He was doing stuff where others are just dreaming about doing that.
Yeah.
And that is, and there came also the day came where I, so say, I felt the forgiveness
Mm,
towards my father, and then that helped a lot. And then the wish started to grow, to make a line of tobaccos to honor him.
hmm
mm.
From his very early military career on board the Royal Yacht, over his 33 years in the Harbour Police in Copenhagen, and that is the first four. That is what I call inspired by water.
Okay.
And the next one, well, they could be inspired by the pipe factory and all the stories from that period.
Mm,
So it never went anywhere until I came in contact with you guys.
mm,
And I think there was a reason why it didn't uh, went to be before.
mm.
And that was because I was waiting for the right tobacco.
Because it's meant to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes you cannot explain why it is like that, but
hmm
just turns out that's how it is.
hmm hmm
And then the week I had in March with you, and it was tremendous.
hmm
It was a learning process for me as well, because I came from McBaron, a big company.
hmm
If you cannot produce 500 kilos from one blend, forget it.
mm.
Then we cannot produce it.
Per, if I
Well,
may,
yeah,
if I may, on that note, I'm curious. I feel like I know the answer, but if I could ask, as a blender, your experience going from a really large company, a really large organization like McBaron, to working with Jeremy at Cornell and Diehl, was it like a relearning process? Were you back to your roots? Did it feel liberating and creatively more free for you?
Yes, yes to all of the above. No, but and it's impossible to be in bad mood with you guys. There's always something happening, and everybody's smiling. But what I learned from Jeremy, he took me by surprise, because I was used to. We had three taste givers in tobacco. We had the raw tobacco itself, we had the casing, and we had the top flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And here suddenly I'm in the factory where we have the raw tobacco. We hardly have any casings and hardly any toppings, if any at all. So that was a complete other learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's more tobacco pure
Sure.
than what we had. And then just to give an example, the two Virginia flakes, the bright one and the red one, is actually a take on making a yellow capstan and a blue capstan, how they would look in the 60s.
Ooh,
Before
that's actually the
recipes
first
went
one.
to,
The first
yeah,
one I chose to smoke.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. And the English had the purity laws forbidding, or they had a very small list where it was on what it was allowed to put in tobacco. And this
Just like
purity
German
law,
beer.
yeah, it went back to the 16th century,
Mhm.
because the bakers were putting sawdust in the bread, and the wine cellar was adding lead to make the color more red, and then they
Mhm.
introduced the purity law, and that
Mm.
also for tobacco.
Mm.
So they didn't put any funny stuff in it.
Mm.
And that ended in 1986 when England joined the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
But a capstan made under the purity laws is, I think, very close to what we have made with the two Virginia flakes.
Mm.
What do you think, Jeremy?
I mean, I think so. Of course, I've not smoked any of those tobaccos in without a bunch of age on them. I've had the opportunities to smoke some very old tins of tobacco,
Yeah.
and some very old tins of Capstan, but it is difficult for me to parse how much of that, how much of what I'm experiencing is to do with the age and how much of it is to do with the processing. I will say that the older tins of Capstan that I have tried seemed different to me in terms of what I guessed ingredients might have been in the tobacco.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
from more modern examples of Capstan, if that makes sense. There's a certain amount of like guesswork involved, but I have a little bit of an idea of what things used to be done and what things are being done in more modernity, and you can kind of taste those things even if the tobacco is
Yeah.
very, very aged.
Yeah, it does
But
have a remarkable emotional similarity
Mm-hmm.
to those blends. Like there is that youthful sort of like zestier quality to it, considering
Mm-hmm.
that it's fresh. But even the aroma right now is like it's ringing some bells from some aged examples
Yeah.
that I've smoked.
Yeah.
And of course, on the palate, I can feel the difference in the age. But like I said, like the best you can do when all of us, I mean, a bunch of us weren't even born yet when those tobaccos were last made. And like,
Right,
even if
right.
we've been fortunate enough to try them, I think the best you can do is see if it rings some of those same bells. And like I said, having this sort of like emotional, same response and same feeling that you get from them. And yeah, there's just like a tanginess here that's different from all of the sort of vinegary type of tanginess that we've experienced in modern tobacco production. That does remind me very much of some of the old Ogdens and Bells produced
Yeah.
tobaccos.
Yeah, it's a very good question because nobody can prove it.
Mhm.
If you find a tin from the 60s, it has 80 years of storage.
Mhm.
So it's not freshly made like our tobaccos are now. So, but let's meet in 80 years and try it.
That
Sounds
sounds
like a
good.
plan.
That
Yeah.
sounds good.
On another Zoom call. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 All right. So we've got Port Guardian, which Per, from your perspective, was sort of not a match for Capstan Blue, but sort of capturing that same sort of experience of old Capstan Blue. And then King's Watch, the yellow label, sort of again trying to recapture that experience of old Capstan Yellow. There's also two more entries, and that is Harbour Dreams, which is a sort of a sophisticated, ready rub, burly, slight, very light arrow um, quality to it, and then Brothers in Arms, which is a little bit more like dark fired forward. Can you speak to like those two blends specifically? Maybe like if there were certain things you were trying to capture with
Sure,
those in the same way.
sure. The burley has a chocolate note.
Okay.
And I remember
Mhm.
back to the 60s when I went visiting with my father and mother to Langelinje, that part of the harbor in Copenhagen, also where the
Mhm.
Little Mermaid is placed. But this is at the top, at the spear of the harbor. That was where he had his duty. And beside that, there was a place where they were selling ice. And I always remember I was looking forward to it because I always got an ice, and that is
Mhm.
where I learned to love chocolate ice.
Sure. Yeah.
So that might have a little bit to do with the choice as well.
Mhm.
And of course, my father was checking ships when they were coming in, security, bill of loading, and all that kind of things. And he also had American ships. And Americans, well, they were burley smokers.
Mm.
So, and my father at that time said, well, we don't throw anything away, we smoke it.
Mhm.
So he smoked the
Good man.
burley
Good man.
from time to time. And then the fourth one, the dark fired Kentucky,
Mhm.
with a little bit Perique. That was actually his favorite, where he took the capstan. He took some. He preferred Three Nuns, but if not, then Dark Twist would do, and then John Player's Red that
Mm.
doesn't exist anymore. But it was an old flake, very thinly cut, and then he mixed it all, put it into a jar, and yeah, well, that was also my first tobacco to smoke when I sneaked into a pipe and I filled it and I almost died.
I was going to say that's a
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah, it was
That's
so
a strong introduction
Yeah,
for sure.
think
Ooh.
about that for a newbie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
burned, and there was a couple of years where I said, no, never, never, never again.
Mm.
But yeah, I got over it. And
So
then the old Three Nuns had the Perique in the center.
mhm.
So and
I
Virginia's
love the tin
and
note on this one.
Mhm. Yeah, I think they're all quite good. And I think what's really special about them is that like not only do the blends themselves sort of capture this moment in time, like this sort of ephemeral, like nostalgia, like recreating an experience that you remember, but I think the 10 art too sort of reflects that. I think um, paired, what you went for here was, these really awesome photographs of your father or like these various places that you've mentioned. So like
yeah,
cohesively, like I think even the packaging sort of helps bring you into that time. Um, and help you kind of re-experience that in a new way.
Mm.
So yeah, just really, really interesting all around. Jeremy, we haven't heard much from you. For me, all of these blends sort of give me this sort of Danish American crossover kind of vibe, right?
Sure.
Like it's sort of like Danish flavors or Danish ways of approaching tobacco, but like manufactured the way that, you know, we do it at C&D. Can you speak to like some of that and how, you know, on the production end of things, or like how to scale this, that you know might have been challenging, or like some of the things that like you found interesting about the project?
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was obviously first, um, you know, working with Per so closely in the factory. It was really important to me that um, that we kind of, you know, were going in the direction that he wanted these blends to go. Um, but at the same time, it was kind of cool to be able to bounce ideas off of one another of different ways to
Yeah.
approach
Yeah.
creating a flavor profile, and
Mhm.
where perhaps in a McBaron manufacturing situation, there would have been, we need this sort of flavor here. Let's turn to this type of processing or this type of
Mhm.
additive.
Yeah.
For us, it's more like we need this type of flavor here, and there's a tobacco that can do that.
Mhm.
Nine
Yeah.
times out of
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just finding, you know, but it's different as an approach. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think it was fun to be able to see uh, our manufacturing techniques sort of fresh through
Mhm.
his eyes. At the same time that I was also learning about, you know, what their manufacturing techniques and approach were,
Would have been.
and yeah, gaining insights both ways. But yeah, ultimately that was kind of what I realized was like we're just turning to different ingredients to
Mhm.
accomplish
To
the flavors
accomplish,
that,
The
yeah.
yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I ask maybe a silly question? Per, specifically for you coming into the Cornell Diehl thing, and again, I think the context there of like using the tobaccos in a way that you maybe would have been using flavorings and like vice versa is like really interesting. Because I think a lot of us as smokers think that like a lot of this is very black and white. Like you got to put this much Black Cavendish in a blend if you're trying to achieve this thing, and if you want it to taste like chocolate, you use chocolate number 2 or whatever. So that's the kind of stuff that I find interesting here. And a lot of the work that Jeremy does that I've tried to like observe and learn from is the way that, you know, not just substituting ingredients, but like balancing them against other things is a factor as well. I'm curious, when you guys were here in the factory and looking at all the tobaccos, you've seen a crazy amount of tobacco in your time as well. Was there any particular component? It doesn't even have to have made it into these blends because, of course, this isn't the end of this collaboration. Was there any particular component that we had that Jeremy had sourced that you found particularly interesting or that you really loved?
Not a specific tobacco, but I have something else I found fantastic.
Mm.
First of all, and I'm sorry to do this, Jeremy, but I have to send some nice words your direction. You
I'm gonna go in
are
the other room.
yeah
We
you
can, we
are
can
you
just turn
are
off his
really
audio, just mute him.
yeah, you are really a fantastic tobacco blender. You know your raw tobaccos. And you
Thank
know
you.
you're great. So if we're going to change a little bit, then okay, I'll try this one and put it in, and then at last we succeeded. Um, but what struck me in the whole factory, that is the enthusiasm from everybody,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and everybody was taking care.
Mhm.
I'm
I'm not a poetic man, but I would say you are in love with your raw materials,
Mm.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
and that is a big step of the way.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm extremely glad that this project didn't happen before we met.
Mhm.
No,
Same. Well,
to be
thank you
quite
very
honest,
much, Bear. I mean, it was really cool to get to to kind of show uh show you around and show you our approach to things and see what we were doing through your eyes. I've been doing this for,
Hmm.
11 years, and like this is just day to day. But it was really cool to realize like all over again, like, oh yeah,
yeah,
we're handling it at every stage, and like people know what it's supposed to smell like, and people know what it's
Feel
supposed to
like
feel
and
like and
Feel
look
like,
like.
yeah.
Yeah. So
but Jeremy, take it easy. The fun is not over yet.
And Jeremy, if I may, I have a similar question. I mean, you guys have touched on some of this already, but I know you well. You and I have been hobbyists and smokers, and then we came into the business at a very similar time. Andy, same thing. Like
uh-huh.
Jeremy, you and I were within a couple months. Andy, you and I were within a couple months. Like
Hmm.
I know your guys' history as pipe smokers, and I have to say, Per, that there was a period in time, and I think all of us remember this fondly, but you were doing some of the coolest product
Hmm.
development that
Hmm.
McBaren had seen in
Yep.
decades. And I
Mhm.
know that the three of us here, like I remember the first time you and I met, Per, and we've spent time at pipe shows all over the world together and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I'm wondering, Jeremy, what is it like for you to come into this project looking back on yourself before you were blending tobacco,
Yeah.
smoking modern Virginia and mature Virginia and HH Acadian
All the
Creek and
HAs,
pure
yeah.
Virginia when it came out. And like I
Uh-huh.
remember how much all those products meant to us as smokers. And being able to work with Per on something new. I'm just curious, like what that was like for you.
I mean, quite frankly, it was intimidating. It was, like I love what we put together at C&D. And I believe in our manufacturing practices. I believe in the way that we approach things. But at the same time, I was like, what is Per going to think? What is his perspective going to be? And it was intimidating. It was nerve-wracking to think
Mm.
like, okay, kind of like, I'm it's sort of like a little bit here, inspect my baby.
Yeah.
And in order for this to all work, you have to really give me feedback. You can't just say,
Yeah.
oh, it's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Jeremy, I understand you completely. I had the same feeling at McBaren when tobacco guys were visiting McBaren. I have to show them around.
Hmm.
And they were looking at it with their experience, with their eyes, and perhaps judging us for doing one or the other thing.
Right.
But as I said, when I came with open eyes and no prejudices.
Hmm.
So everything I could see, I could learn would just be fantastic. It was something new because I know I'm not a McBaren anymore.
Mm.
So yeah,
Well, it was really cool going through that process and working with you and getting to also like thinking like I'm getting to work with Per Jensen, who was a master blender before I really
Hmm.
even um you know was doing anything in tobacco except maybe selling it.
Mhm.
uh
yeah.
so yeah, it was really cool going like I'm working on a Virginia Flake with the mind behind the HH line. Like that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So Louisiana Perique blend, I still have tens and tens stacked away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Love that stuff so much.
I remember
Yeah.
the first time I visited McBaren, Per, and you and I had lunch together, and
Mhm.
we ate stigflesk. And
Steakflesk, yeah. Oh God.
yeah, and I had an ale 16, that was the first one I ever had. I've had way too many since then. Um, but that was before the Pure Virginia release, and you gave me some to sample, and I remember smoking it and just being like, oh my God, like I think especially back to the early days of Cornell and Diehl being part of Laudisi, like we had such a close relationship with you and with McBaren in general. And I mean, we all really looked up to the products that you were putting out. Like it
Mhm.
was a benchmark. in
For
modern
sure.
tobacco production, in this renaissance that we've seen in the last 20 years of interest in quality pipe tobacco. You were leading the charge in many ways, and
Absolutely.
all of us were super excited about all of those products, and it's just really cool
Mhm.
to be sitting here talking about something new that's a
Yeah.
collaboration between the both of you guys.
Yeah,
While
but
having like sleeves and sleeves of like pure Virginia just behind
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
oh,
I have a
very
lot of
good,
it still.
very good. Let me ask you one question. I get it very often. I get the question, which of the blends you have made are the best?
mm,
Ooh.
And there can only be one answer. The next one.
the next one.
And
Stay
Yeah.
tuned.
as long as we think like that,
Hmm.
we're going to have some good times.
Oh yeah.
I have one more like sort of like, consumer kind of question for the both of you guys. We've gone through the blends, we've talked about like the inspiration behind some of them and like what they're trying, like, what they're trying to achieve. And I think there's a return to an approach to blending that is more about the raw materials and it is more about the purity of them than it is about, fancy dressings and top notes and stuff like that. Um, where do you guys see, or where would you recommend to consumers? Like, how does this lineup fit into a rotation? Where would you recommend starting? Like, what if you're this kind of a smoker? Which one of these is for you? Like, do you guys have any insight into that so far in terms of where you would make suggestions for folks? Like, if somebody comes into this blind as a particular type of smoker, which one are they trying first?
I would suggest one of the Virginia flakes.
Mm.
Perhaps
Hmm.
King's Watch, the bright Virginia flake.
Hmm.
Um, and then go on to the next one would then be the burley, because it's also a very pleasant tobacco to smoke.
Hmm.
Um, and the last one would be the dark fired Kentucky, because you need a certain palate to be
Hmm.
able to enjoy it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
That would be. I don't know if you agree, Jeremy, or you have another.
No, I think that's an accurate approach in terms of how I would stack them in strength, and that's usually how I think of going
Yeah.
through, tasting
Hmm.
flavors.
Yeah,
You want to start with the thing that's least overt, least strong and full,
least
and
rich, and yeah.
yeah, move richer. But certainly the Brothers in Arms is really well suited to end of day kind of
Mhm.
Isn't that
smoke.
what you call an all day smoke?
What's that?
Isn't it what we call an all day smoke?
Well,
For
I
some
think
of
of it as
us.
being rich enough that
For
I might
Andy.
put it for after dinner. But if somebody really likes robust tobaccos, it certainly could be an all day smoke for someone else. I
Yeah.
wouldn't put it there. But I do think that Harbor Dreams could
Mhm.
easily be an all day smoke
Mhm.
for
I mean,
me.
Port Guardian for me. My preferences in Virginia's lean a little
Mm.
towards the darker side anyway, and this definitely could be an all day smoke for me. Are there any of the four blends that the two of you find yourself reaching for more at the moment? I wouldn't ask what your favorite is because I know that can change depending on our moods and what we're looking for. But at the moment, which of the four are you guys reaching for the most?
I think I'll let Jeremy answer that question, because I have none.
You mean after the samples?
Yes, I have been smoking all the samples, and unfortunately, I have no more. But
We'll work on that.
We can
the one
fix that.
the
We
one
can
I
fix
was
that.
reaching, that was one of the two of the Virginia flakes. I'm a Virginia
Mhm,
smoker.
Mm.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah, I was smoking a lot of Port Guardian, and then I've really been getting into enjoying Harbor Dreams.
Mhm.
Um,
mhm,
those have been the two that I've kind of gone most back and forth between.
Yeah.
But uh, especially for an earlier in the day kind of smoke,
Mhm.
King's Watch is right up my alley. And like I say, I think that Brothers in Arms is one that I have enjoyed a few times after dinner.
Yep. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
We
I'm
don't
gonna.
have a Latakia blend in the mix, and so to folks who
What?
might be interested in English mixtures, I would suggest um,
Brothers in
checking
Arms.
out Brothers in Arms, just because
Mhm.
there is a smoky character and a depth of flavor there that might
Mhm.
might appeal and fit sort of a similar niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
we're just starting now, so
yes, yes.
Yes,
give time.
absolutely.
Give time.
I was actually really pleased. I haven't had a chance to smoke it yet. I'm going to make my way through all of these, of course, and I'm sure people can probably hear me and see me talk about what I think about them when I do that. But Harbor Dreams, I was really like impressed not only with the idea on paper, because that's the thing too, is I do feel like the sort of traditional American burley style tobaccos is not a format that we really see a lot in the market in the
Mhm.
last decade or so. And a lot of times I think when you think about burley tobaccos, you also think about the addition of various Cavendishes and all kinds of stuff
Mhm.
like that, all kinds of different flavorings, and they're good. And there's a reason that there's still a lot of people that are interested in those type of blends. But this immediately has the feeling and the sort of emotion. It elicits the emotional response that the old school style American burleys did. Like, I mean, the tin note is insane.
Mhm.
It's so captivating. And yeah, I'm really excited about that one in particular because I feel like, yes, I can wrap my head around King's Watch and Port Guardian and what they're meant to be, and it's like right up my alley. But I actually think that on paper, Harbor Dreams would have been something that I would have been like, okay, yeah, I'm interested in it, but I'm much more interested in it now, and it's because it has that feeling of that old school American burley blend, without a lot of extra frills, without a lot of extra flavors, and yeah, I mean, every now and then you dip in the cellar, you get a old tin of Edgeworth, and
Mhm.
nothing smokes like that. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like nothing scratches that itch like those old school burleys with a little bit of that chocolate going on.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we just don't see a lot of that on the market anymore. I think it was an interesting choice for you guys to start with a blend like that in the line.
Mhm.
And that's very exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I think we're kind of wrapped up here on time. So just want to take a moment and thank you guys both for sitting in with us and for doing this interview. And yeah, I'm really excited about this launch, and I hope that all of you enjoy these tobaccos as much as we've enjoyed being part of their development. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Per. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
I enjoyed it.